The next day I did some sanding, did some cleaning up, but this area in the back is looking pretty good. We just got to do a little bit more A's work and just kind of seam up some stuff and sand, but that's looking pretty good. There's a little spot right here that I could use some putty work or maybe some A's to fill in here. I mean, she'll be sitting down, you really won't see it, but I just kind of want to get that smooth out. Now the areas in here are completely like not even touching. So I want to put some A's in there and get that lined up. But also in the front of the skirt over here, there's a lot of air bubbles. I just realized it now, and I put my tool in there, and there's some really messed up areas in there. So what I want to do is, first I'm going to make this in the front a little bit cleaner. When this leg kind of captures over this, it'll be a little bit more flush. And then I'll go into here, finish up all this, so that at least the bottom part of her will be all nice and done by tomorrow. Alright, so I worked on the boots a little bit. Basically, I dremel out a line around the boots and I put in A's, and I've been working out the lines. Now, the A's is really soft right now, so I'm letting it cure up a little bit more, get a little bit tougher, and then I can make some better line work on those. So I'm just kind of letting them sit while I'm working on other stuff. So I figured it would be a good chance to start prepping up the cape, and also so I could drop it off at the seamstress this week, and this way she could start working on it. So this way, by the time when everything's ready to go and I got the head installed, I can start planning out how the cape's going to be installed. I can make out the lines a little bit better, make it all even. If you've seen my work in progress series of building the 90s Supergirl with the white t-shirt and blue skirt version, we're going to be installing the cape the same way like that on this. So this cape will have a wire. What we'll do is we'll glue it in on the two holes at the end, so this way you can bend it up and have it flowing the way you want. Now, this is the cape I made first, and as you can pretty much see, it's very, very wide on here, and it was just kind of like a rough sketch. So from this rough sketch, I came up with this. So this one is a little bit longer, and it's pretty much in scale how if she was to like fly, it kind of comes down to about where the knees would be. So that's kind of what I came up with. Now, the way I design it is, when I give it to the seamstress, this is kind of like where my guides will be gluing in, but what I like to have her do is make the wire and the cloth come all the way out further, so this way I can figure out where I need to do it. I can cut it, I can do a little bit of sew work myself, bend the wire, because what I'll do is I'll cut the fabric but leave the wire longer, bend it, and then this way I could sort of like tuck it in. So that's kind of where I'm at with this. So I'm going to go and get this dropped off when I can. I don't know if we're going to be able to do any kind of like yellow trim. It depends on how thick it's going to be at the end. Maybe we're just going to do a red cape. I know I would like to do yellow trim and stuff, but we'll see how far she can take it. Because on the cape on the picture, we have yellow trim here, but then we also have yellow trim in the inside. And if we do all kinds of yellow trim, because she's got to do the fabric and then bend a piece around it, it might be way too thick to get into here. Because, you know, you're looking at a picture, it's really small, but we're working on a 1/6 scale, so we know how far we can take it. So I'm going to ask her what she can do. If she can't do it, then it's just going to be a red cape. It's just one of these things where, you know, fabric and stuff on such a small scale is kind of difficult. So we're going to get this cleaned up a little bit more, and what we'll do is we'll stop the camera, we'll go over to the head, show you what I did with the hair, and then hopefully by the time we come back, we can start piecing everything together. Alright, so I think at this point we're good with the hair. As you can see, I did a lot of filler in the inside now, so it's not as like just a big hole there. What it did is it added a lot more red strand and stuff. It just had extra A's at night, so I just kept filling it in. We had some extra white A's fix-it sculpt that I added some here and there. And I just wanted to get more strands, more random stuff coming around, like it's really flowing. It's not as close to the artwork as I would love it to be, but at least now we have a little bit more fuller hair, a little bit more streaks, a little bit more stuff kind of just randomly going all over the place. So I showed it to the client, he's happy with it, and it's really looking pretty good. So what we'll do is we'll get it all cleaned up, we'll get it primed, and hopefully we'll start piecing this together and get it ready for paint. Okay, so we're gonna fill this in with foam right now. This is just like some foam you can get at Home Depot that you use for your house and like doorways and stuff like that. It's good for filling in something small like this. If this was a bigger item like a life-size hollow head or like a bigger like 1/4, third statue that's hollow, you're better off getting the two-part resins foam from Smooth On, which is actually a lot more durable and better at filling in hollow stuff. But something this small, this is good for what I need to do, because all I really need is to work out a peg system to go into here. So this is a sturdy on the here when we're done, and then also I have to Dremel out this area and create a peg in there. The client wants her to go in and out of the base, so she's not attached to it for shipping and packing, and for any kind of reasons down the line. So if I Dremel this off, it's going to be hollow here. So if I could fill this in with foam first and Dremel this out in here and Dremel a hole down there, I could fill it in with some resin or Magic Sculpt or whatever, and I could create a better key system. So we'll kind of go over that. But also, a little piece fell off of here because I guess whoever drilled through here must have went right through the piece and drilled through there. And like I said, there's something in here, so it's better just to kind of fill this in. So I'm going to Dremel this a lot bigger because we need to have it bigger. Something small like this is really not going to get a lot of foam in there. You're better off having a wider area. I could put tape around this. I'll set it on the floor, and we'll just let the foam kind of just ooze out of it. And then once it cures up, we'll have a nice, good, solid base and at least filled with foam. The one other thing too is the reason why you want to fill all your hollow items like this size with foam or resins or whatever is because if it gets hot and cold, it expands and contracts. You can start ending up with cracks and issues down the line. I learned that the hard way when I got into hobby and I did something and I didn't do that, and then I realized like a year down the line all the paint was cracking off the item because I didn't fill it with foam. So we'll get this filled in and keep plugging away. Okay, so I just popped this out. You can see it's still expanding out a little bit. I got to kind of dig it out a little bit more. I put a lot of foam in here, so it's got a lot of expanding foam. It kind of wants to get out of here. So I guess what happened is because I put a lot in there, it sort of split this a little bit, and some of the foam came through. But it's actually going to kind of bond it together, which is good. I realized what happened is I thought this was a roto-casted item as one solid piece, and this just was flashing. But what it is actually this piece is casted separate from this piece, and then I guess the person who put it together just put some glue on there, and I guess since it's so old, that glue must have just gotten weak, so when I put in the expanding foam, it sort of split it a little. But it's fine though, but it actually helps me see where the seam line is around here. So what I'll be doing is over the next couple of days is whatever time I have extra Aves or Magic Sculpt and stuff, what I could do is I could kind of build up around here and lock this into place and sort of build up around here as well and try to get rid of the seam line, try to kind of capture the rocks a little bit too, but also just really secure it. So by putting something around there, it's like putting a belt around it and like locking it in place. What I'll do is like when I put some A's around here, I'll sort of kind of go around here and here as well, so it kind of like locks it in place. So I got to kind of build up around it and everything. But I think that's kind of good to find it out now than to try to drill it later, put it in, and all of a sudden it splits on me. So it's kind of good to find this stuff while you're kind of working on it. So that's just one little step we have to take care of. So what I'm going to do is kind of clean this up a little bit more and get this all prepped up. And then hopefully by the time we come back, we can start putting everything together. Alright, so next day, everything's cured up. Everything's looking pretty good. So what I did is I Dremel out the hole bigger here. And what I did is I took out some of the foam. And I have this resin piece in my box of parts that's sitting there. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some Aves around here. We're going to put this in here like so. And get this secured in there. Then what I might do is when I Dremel, maybe I'll Dremel through the top or I'll pour in some resin. I'm not really sure yet, but we have to get something to secure this piece onto the base so it doesn't fall. Just by putting foam in there and drilling a hole through there is not going to hold it. We really got to make sure it's secured. So I'm just going to put a bunch of this Aves in here. We'll put this piece in here, let this cure. What I probably might do is I'm thinking I might leave this open and I might pour resin into here and let it kind of come around the edge and around the back and kind of like bond in there and really lock it in place. You got to get something in there because I hate working with hollow items like this because you always have to kind of rebuild around an area that makes stuff secured. So especially since this piece is going to be holding up the back of this and then also the figure, we want to make sure that this is secured no matter what we do. All right, so we got this arm on. I sanded it down. There's a little bit of putty work right here, but this red that you see in between here is the Aves. So this arm is secured. I sanded down around here just to kind of take this up a little bit. And then what I did right here is sculpt a little bit of a belt. Nothing too crazy, just a little bit of a square piece that I'll paint in like a little bit of a more metallic, and the belt is kind of just waving a little bit over that way. I didn't want to go crazy with the belt that might snap or anything. I did drill under here, so what I'm going to do is start working out the peg under here and also on the bottom of the base. I figured it'll be easier if I could get her sort of secured on the base now and then put the head on. I was ready to put the head on today, but I figured if I get this head on right now and I don't have this set up on the bottom, I might snap and break some pieces of the hair here and there. So it's better for me just to start working out the metal rod and getting it all set up on the base. Alright, so next day, and I want to set up the rod that's going to be attached down into the bottom of the base, and then I can sort of seal it up here. So I might make this hole a little bit bigger, just so I can sort of kind of get some of this magic sculpt in there. Because you figure I'm going to pour some resin at the bottom of the rock down there, so the resin kind of locks into this piece. And then once that's kind of cured, which will only take like 10 minutes, I'll be able to kind of bond up here. So we're going to have bonding of both places, you know, the bottom and the top up here, so this way it shouldn't come out. So the thing is, when I pour in the resin, I can't like, you know, have the resin turn this way. I have to kind of turn it like at my palm so it kind of cures at the bottom. I did kind of push the foam away a little bit too. So what I want to do is I want to make sure it lines up. Now I'm not worried if the feet and the hand is actually touching the rock at all, because I'm going to clean that up anyway. The main thing is we want to make sure that this is going to go in evenly and it's going to work out pretty well. So I'm going to probably do this off camera only because it's a little bit tricky and I have to hold it and make sure everything lines up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger in the garage. I'm going to pour the resin down there, let it cure up, and then hopefully by the time it's all done, what all I could do is just take some of this magic sculpt and sort of put it around the top up there, just to kind of lock it in place for a little bit. And then what I could do is we can use Aves here, here, and here, and set everything up to make it all even. So she just goes in and out of the base, I mean the rock, and everything will work out pretty well. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Alright, so I did this off camera. I had to get this going only because I had a bunch of A's left over and had to get some other stuff done. So I filled in here with the magic sculpt to lock that rod in, and that dried up probably like maybe an hour ago. So I started working on some other stuff and I had a little bit of extra A's. So what I've been doing is holding this leg on here and making sure she sets in and out of the base. So I got to just sand down the rod a little bit more, just like some fine sanding, because it's got some caked up stuff on it. And then once that's done, it should go into the rod with no problem. When she fits into here, I don't want to do it right now because it's all soft, but you don't see any of the peg or the rod sticking out at all the way I set this up. So once she sets in there, it's all rock. So that's what I wanted to go for. Now, once this all cures up and everything's ready to go, I'll probably work out the hand a little bit more. But I might not be able to work out the feet just yet, only because these legs are separated, and I don't want to have the leg on like by accident, like split like that, and then set up the foot over here, and then when I actually glue this on and attach it, and then I go to set her in, it might not fit. So I'm going to leave the feet alone until I'm ready to do paint up work. I could probably get her all painted up and everything, and then just do a little bit of A's work here, make sure I just put a little bit of baby powder, clean it off, and touch up some paint, and then I can actually paint up the rock at the end. So that's kind of what my goal is right now. So we're going to let this cure up now. Once she's set up, we can work out the hand, and then we can actually start planning to get her onto that base. And then once that's kind of locked into place, we can pretty much start focus on the rest of the body and get her done. Okay, it's the end of the night. I did this part of the thing early this morning, probably around 9 o'clock. It's this morning, it's probably like 8 o'clock now. So we're pretty much ready to kind of close up for the night. So I figured let's just do another step and get it over and done with, so tomorrow I could get a lot more work done. So she goes in and out of the base with no problem now. She lines up very well. This foot lines up pretty decent over here. The only problem is the hand doesn't really line up. So I'm going to have to do some Aves work tomorrow with the hand. And then like I said, what we're going to do is we'll paint her up, we'll get her done. So this way when this leg is attached and we put her into the base, we'll have to see about fixing this foot over here if we need to do any work. But what I want to do tonight is, before I close up, is I want to set up this steel rod into here. Now this is key stock as well, steel, but this is super big steel key stock that I've had for ages. I find very random projects that I need this stuff for. So this is a good chance to actually get a rod in here with some Magic Sculptor Aves, let it cure up for the night, and then tomorrow what I can do is I can sort of start planning on how it's going to sit in the base. So I think what's going to happen is the rock is going to get painted separately. This base is going to get painted separately. I'm going to sculpt a little extra rock underneath here so it kind of covers the rod so we don't see any rod work at all. And then this way I can paint both items separate and then kind of attach them at the end. And then we can actually have her attached. Now what I did do though is I made sure that this isn't like centered. If this rock is centered where you put the rod, this will kind of fall forward. We don't want that. So what I did is I drummed the hole backwards so the weight of the item is kind of still centered into the base. So this way the base isn't going to go anywhere. So that's kind of what we wanted to do. So I'm going to get this set up tonight, get this finished, and then by the time tomorrow we should be pretty much set up with getting everything else fine-tuned. And then hopefully by next week we'd have the cape, we could plan that out, and then we could get the paintwork. Alright, so I did some tests and I had to rig up a little system where lining her up with the rock on the base and also making sure it would be secured with the base. So after I did some tests I realized I had to tweak some things. So she goes in and out of the base with no issues, so that's fine. But the problem was the rock with the one rod wasn't working out too well. So what I did is I created another little bit of a notch over here with some my smooth on freeform, and then I drilled 2 holes here, as you can see. Now with these two is they lock into place like so, like that. And this way, once I attach that to the base at the end, it's really going to hold very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of drum out a little bit here, and then I'm going to drum out a rod going in there. So this way, when I put some like Aves, Magic Sculpt, or whatever I use on here at the end of the project, I can just make sure that these 2 pieces are locked in there and it holds. So just by going like this, it's not going anywhere and all that. So that's kind of what I came up with. You know, I mean, sometimes like with projects like these, you just got to kind of fudge them and make your, you know, work for yourself. So that's kind of where we're at. So I'm going to go in the garage now. I'll work on this. Going to do some more cleaning up. And hopefully by the time we come back, we should have the cape and start getting the head installed. Okay, so today we had finally a break in the weather. So it was a good day to get in the garage to do a lot of chopping, sanding, and prime work. So what I did is I primed up the rock. I wanted to make sure everything was looking pretty seamed up pretty well. And everything is. I also made sure with some extra Aves working on today that the hand and foot are now flush against the rock. So I had to build up a little bit over here, and then I had to build up just a tiny bit there, not much, just a little bit. Like I said, I might have to build up over in here when I put the other foot on, but that's after we do a lot of the paint work and everything with that. So the rock is pretty much almost ready to go. Once that Aves cures up by tomorrow, I could actually even start painting the rock, get it over and done with, and I wouldn't really have to worry about it. I'm going to rig up a system too with putting this on a rod, so this way she's kind of sitting above so I can actually do stuff with this. But I have to prime this up one more time, which I'm going to do tonight before I close up shop, and then I could find sand tomorrow, and hopefully this will be all ready to go. One of the other things too I did was I drummed out a large opening here and a large opening here, because the problem is we're going to use, once the cape, this cloth cape is done and we plan it out, it's going to get drummed in, it's going to get glued into here and glued into here. Now the problem is when I work on a 1/4 scale head, you have a lot more room to work, and this head is tilted, so it's going to be very hard to get into there. So what I did is I just did a marking here and a marking here. I'm going to have to go into the garage now and Dremel out this area here. So this way when I attach the head, I can actually work out the cloth that comes across instead of loops down. And I got to be careful not to ruin the symbol. And then I'll have 2 openings where I could kind of start cleaning them up. And then when I have the cape in hand, I could plan it out a little bit more. And then at the very end, what we do is we'll just tuck the cape in with some glue. And then it'll be attached forever. And then we'll be ready to go. So I just got to do a little bit more Dremel work, get this cleaned up, and then hopefully in 2 days when I have the cloth cape, we could just do some tests and then start paint work. Okay, the cape came in. And this is what we got. I really like the way it came out. It's got the yellow trim. It's a little bit messy. It's not 100% perfect because the red is a little bit fraying. So I got to kind of cut out some of the little frays as best as I can. So what we came up with is we used a green floral wire for like flowers and stuff, or like garden stuff. Because this stuff seems to be a little bit sturdier and thinner for a small scale statue. Whereas the aluminum stuff you get at like Michael's in the hobby section, like of all the jewelry stuff, it's good wire, but the problem is like after a couple of bends, it'll just snap on you. So this stuff is a little bit more durable, plus it's very thin, so I think it was going to work better for the statue. And the other thing too is if we tried to put yellow fabric trim around here and then sew that on, it would have become so thick at the top here that I would never been able to get it into these spots here for a 1/6 scale. If this was a 1/4 scale, like, you know, it would be much bigger and we could get away with it, but this one we couldn't. So this is kind of like the drawback we came up with. But she did a good job with it. It's a pretty, you know, it's nice and sturdy. I like the fabric that we chose, and it's going to work out pretty good. So all I have to do is sort of cut like right about here and like right about here. Do a little sewing work on my own. Keep the wires long though, and then sort of cut the wires and bend them in. So this way, when the cape goes around the head like so, it'll go in about here, like say like right about there, as you can see. And then you could kind of have it like flow up and bend, and you could do it the way you want to do it. So we, you know, it's gonna, like, if it was laid down on her back, it'll be like right about there, like so, and then it could go up that way. So that's kind of what we came up with. So what I have to do now is I'm gonna have to go into the garage tomorrow. I'm gonna have to sand all this down, clean this up, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna start building this out. So if you saw my series on that 90s Supergirl custom 1/4 scale statue I did, where I actually it was the white t-shirt with the blue shorts skirt. If you saw the way I did the fabric on there, and then also the way I sculpted this, it's going to be like the same exact process. And this way we could paint her up, and then at the end we can just take the cape and we could just install it in there with some glue. Like I'll just give you an example. Like this would kind of be bent a little bit, and this will get glued into that little piece there, and then it'll be in there for good, and it'll be like something like that. So that's kind of like the whole idea and how this is going to work out. It's going to be a little tricky because she's a smaller scale, but I think at the end this will be a lot more durable. We won't have to worry about a cape broken, and then the client can bend the cape and do whatever they want with it. So hopefully by the time we get back, we'll start working out the chest area and get that. Alright, so I had a chance to sort of sand this up. I didn't really get a chance to really prime it at all yet, only because it's just too cold. So I figured at least I can start getting this part set up over here. So I rolled out some A's. I actually was working on some A's with regular red A's and actually the Fix-It. And at times I've actually have mixed both together, and it kind of gives you a little bit of different consistency. And it works fine, so I just mixed them up together so I didn't waste it. So I rolled out a really thin strip, and I'm going to put a thin strip around here and sort of smooth it out, because that's going to be the top of her shirt. And I'm going to let that kind of cure, and then I'm going to have to work out the triangle of the, because the shirt's going to be laying over the hole like so. So if you're not careful, you can break it. But what I'll do is I'll put in A's afterwards, so we'll create a triangle of A's there. So this way when you tuck in the cloth shirt, it doesn't break any of that piece off of the edge. It's a little bit tricky, but right now I'm going to go off camera because I got to take my time and do the strip over here. I might have cut this too thick too, and I just got to have that strip kind of go over the hole about that much, as you can kind of see with my finger hopefully. And then we'll kind of keep working it out as we go. So once these are set up, then we can work out the shirt around her back, and we can make sure the cape goes in nice and smooth, and then after that it's just a matter of starting to paint her up. Alright, so next day, and what I'm going to start doing is filling up in the holes here just to kind of get this smoothed out a little bit so it's not all cracked up back there and everything, and just kind of fill it in. What I did do is I did sand this down this morning, and I did some putty work going across. I may need to do a little bit more putty work here, but I'm trying not to come down too further or sand down too much and take off the Superman symbol. I'm like right at the edge with it, so I just got to kind of get this puttied up today, let this cure, clean this up, and then tomorrow I could prime it and then see if I need to do any more, and then after that we can start fitting in the cape, and then pretty much it should be ready to go. Alright, so I did some sewing work. I cut off the little pieces of the excess, as you can see here. So now we have an area where this actually goes in very well. I actually bent the cord kind of like a little S, and I did some sew work. So this way I could drop in glue and then push this in and let it cure. Now the only problem I'm realizing is the holes that I made are way too big now. I was thinking that, I kept on thinking I designed it where both the yellows have rods in them, but only one has the rod in it. So what I have to do now is I'm going to fill in the back of the hole a little bit to bring it a little bit forward on both of them, because the idea is we want the cloth to push up as much as possible. Right now, it's still, as you can see, it's a little bit too loose, so we just got to fill in the backs of these holes a little bit more. And then once that's done, I can probably actually start doing the seam around the back too as well. I still might need to do the front here a little bit more, only because I need to do some prime work. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do all in one shot. We're going to fill up the hole a little bit, but I'm actually going to create the back of the shirt. So the back of the shirt's going to be like right there, because it's gonna, I don't want it to be here, I want it to be like right there, so this way any skin is kind of in between this red part here. That's kind of what we're going with. So actually you can probably be in the middle more like that, and also with this piece here. And then what we'll do is we'll make a line going across the back like so. So I don't have to follow the original way it was. I can do my own little take on it with a line going across for the blue shirt. So gonna mix up some maize, we'll fill that in, we'll get that lined up right there, let that cure up, and hopefully by tomorrow all we have to do is worry about this spot here and start painting. Okay, so I did a little bit more tweaking around these holes here just to get the cape in. I made it a little too small, so I fixed that up so the cape goes in very good now. I went over the figure one more time. There was a couple spots that needed to have some A's work so that putty wouldn't really have fixed, so I got to let that cure for the night. But I'm going to do some wet sanding tomorrow and make sure everything's looking good. I'm setting everything up on blocks of wood and everything now, so this way I can actually paint the item and mask and get everything going. But since the figure and everything's got to kind of cure it for the night, I can start working on the rock now. So what's going to happen now is we'll end this video and we're going to start the painting series, and we'll start off with the rock. The rock should go very fast. The bottom of the base is just going to be simple black piece, so really don't need to go over that. We'll attach all those pieces and then we'll start working on the figure.